The boardroom was silent, too silent for a Monday morning. Only the ticking of the wall clock and the low hum of the AC filled the space. Elijah Carter, the only black man at the head of the long mahogany table, had just finished presenting a $40 million merger plan that could save the company's future. His slides glowed blue against the cold glass walls. Then the slap came. It wasn't loud. It was sharp, crisp. Disbelief froze every face in the room. Catherine Doyle, senior executive, stood trembling, not from fear but from fury. "Don't you dare talk down to me in my own company," she hissed. Her palm mark burned red across Elijah's cheek. His body stiffened, the room spinning with shock. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and arrogance, clung to the air. Elijah's voice, when it came, was quiet. Too quiet. "Your company," he said. "Check the name on the door." But power didn't care about facts. Within minutes, security appeared, whispering orders from upstairs. Elijah's access badge was disabled. His team looked away, eyes down, hands trembling over their laptops. The last thing he saw before being escorted out was the board's reflection on the glass, half hiding, half watching. Catherine had already turned away, fixing her hair as if nothing had happened. Outside, as rain began to fall, Elijah's phone buzzed with a single message from an anonymous number. "You were never meant to sit at that table." And for the first time, Elijah realized this wasn't an accident. It was a setup. The elevator doors opened to the 26th floor with a soft chime, but Elijah Carter's pulse didn't soften. Not today. The boardroom meeting would decide the company's merger, and in truth, his worth in their eyes. His reflection in the elevator glass stared back. Tailored navy suit, polished shoes, tie knotted clean. Everything immaculate. Everything necessary. He stepped into the hallway. Assistants whispered near the glass wall. One fell silent as he passed. Subtle, practiced avoidance, the kind that pretended not to see. Elijah ignored it, pushing open the boardroom doors. Inside, 12 executives waited, most of them white, all of them watching him. Catherine Doyle, the senior executive, sat near the head of the table, legs crossed, fingers drumming against her tablet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," Elijah said, setting down his tablet. "Let's make this quick." Catherine muttered, "We've been over these numbers already." Elijah clicked the remote. Slides appeared. Merger details, revenue projections, growth strategy. He spoke clearly, confidence measured, every fact verifiable. When he finished, silence hung. Catherine leaned back, voice low and edged. "You're suggesting we take advice from you on risk management?" Her tone sliced through the room. Elijah felt every eye shift toward him, waiting for a reaction. "With respect," he said evenly, "I'm suggesting we avoid a financial disaster by acting now. The data is solid." Her hand came fast. A clean, open-handed slap across his face. Gasps broke the air. Someone dropped a pen. Catherine's face was white with rage. "Don't correct me." Elijah's cheek stung. His mind, sharper than his shock, recorded everything. The smell of her perfume, the trembling coffee cup near the CFO's hand, the frozen look on the intern's face. He straightened slowly. "This behavior," he said, voice tight, "is unacceptable." Catherine's lips curled. "You're lucky to even be sitting here." The CEO, Richard Hale, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. That silence screamed louder than the slap. Elijah looked from one face to another. No one met his eyes. Security arrived within minutes. One of them hesitated before speaking. "Mr. Carter, we've been asked to escort you out." Elijah stared at him. "On what grounds?" "Directive from the board." He felt something break. Not anger, not yet, but the slow shattering of illusion. He turned toward Catherine, who was already adjusting her blazer, pretending calm. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You just taught them how power really works." As he walked out, screens behind him glowed with the words "Access Revoked." His ID badge buzzed red at the elevator. Outside, the city rain blurred everything, glass, streetlights, faces. Elijah stood under it, soaked and motionless, until his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. "You were never meant to sit at that table." He looked up at the company's mirrored tower one last time. Somewhere behind that glass, they were already rewriting the story. And Elijah knew. This was only the beginning. The rain didn't stop when Elijah reached home. It followed him, drumming against the windows like an accusation. He tossed his soaked jacket over the chair and sat on the edge of the couch, motionless. The slap still echoed, not on his face but somewhere deeper beneath the ribs where humiliation hardens into disbelief. His wife Amira came from the kitchen, holding a towel. "Elijah, what happened?" He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his cheek as if trying to erase it. "She slapped me," he said finally. In front of everyone, Amira froze. "Who?" "Catherine Doyle." His voice broke on the name. "And then they fired me." Her face went pale. "They can't after everything you've done for that company?" "They already did." He laughed once, dry, humorless, and no one said a word. Not one of them. Amira sat beside him, wrapping the towel around his shoulders. "You've spent 5 years building that place. You gave them everything." "Everything," he echoed. His phone buzzed. He looked down, messages flooding in. Paul, CFO. "I'm so sorry, man." That was uncalled for. "Stay strong." Lydia, HR. "Please don't make this bigger." Legal is handling it. Maya, analyst. "You didn't deserve that." "But I can't get involved." He read them silently, jaw tight. "They're sorry," he said. "Privately. Always privately." Amira took the phone, scrolled through. "They're scared." "They're complicit," Elijah said flatly. "Silence is complicity." The TV flickered on in the background. News anchors discussing corporate restructuring. The headline crawled, "Carter Tech announces executive changes amid leadership dispute." His name was already being buried beneath euphemisms. Amira turned off the screen. "You're not going to let them get away with this." Elijah leaned back, eyes closing. "You think anyone wants to hear it? A black man claims racism at the top of a billion-dollar firm? They'll call it a misunderstanding. Overreaction. They always do." She placed a hand on his arm. "Then make them listen." He didn't respond. The house filled with the hum of rain and unspoken rage. Later that night, as Amira slept, Elijah scrolled through his emails. His company account disabled. Cloud access revoked. He opened LinkedIn. His title was already gone. The speed of erasure was surgical. Then a new message appeared. From anonymous subject, "They planned it. Body, watch your back." Elijah stared at the screen. His breath hitched. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. He rose, pacing. His mind replayed moments he'd ignored. Catherine dismissing his proposals in meetings, her jokes about diversity hires, Richard's polite but distant tone whenever he spoke of equity. Each one small, deniable, but together, they formed a pattern. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, low and hurried. "Mr. Carter, I was in the boardroom today." Elijah's pulse quickened. "Who is this?" "You don't know me." "You shouldn't, but what they did, it wasn't spontaneous. They wanted you gone." Catherine just took it further. "What do you mean?" "The emails, the memo. Check your inbox tomorrow morning. I'll send proof." The line went dead. Elijah stood in the dark, heart pounding. Proof. His mind flicked between hope and dread. If it was true, it meant he wasn't crazy. But it also meant he'd stepped into something far bigger. He turned to the window. The city lights bled through the rain, blurring into a single dull shimmer. Somewhere out there, they were already rebuilding the narrative. Catherine the victim, Elijah the aggressor. He whispered into the silence, "They think I'll disappear quietly." The reflection staring back didn't blink. He wasn't sure what he would do yet. But the silence of the bystanders had done one thing. It turned humiliation into resolve. Tomorrow he would begin to fight back. The morning light crept through half-drawn blinds, gray and cold. Elijah hadn't slept. The anonymous call echoed in his mind, proof memo planned. He refreshed his email every few minutes, waiting for something that might not come. At 8:03 a.m. it did. Subject, you didn't imagine it. Attachment, internal memo, carterterm.pdf. Elijah clicked. The document opened with the company logo, official, clinical. The language was unmistakable. In anticipation of restructuring, prepare to transition Mr. Elijah Carter out of executive operations, effective immediately upon board directive. Dated 2 weeks before the slap. His hands trembled. They'd planned his removal before the incident. The slap wasn't the cause, it was the trigger. Amira came out of the bedroom, hair messy, eyes tired. "You're still up?" "They wrote the plan to fire me 2 weeks ago," he said quietly, sliding the laptop toward her. She read in silence. They set you up, he nodded. And they'll bury this too. He opened his browser and searched his name. Every company result had been wiped. No profile, no executive listing, no quote from past interviews. His photo, once proudly displayed in the leadership section, was gone. Erased overnight. Then came the headlines. Carter Tech. Executive departs amid conduct concerns. Sources cite internal. Dispute over management style. Senior. Staff member allegedly confrontational toward female. Colleague, his jaw clenched. They'd inverted the story. A call buzzed. His friend, Marcus, a journalist at the Ledger. Elijah, I saw the press release. What the hell happened? They're rewriting the truth, Elijah said. I have proof now, an internal memo. Send it. But listen, they're already mobilizing PR. Catherine's team is claiming you were verbally aggressive. They've got lawyers running point. I was assaulted, Marcus. I believe you. But they'll drown you in spin before your side gets air. Elijah's voice hardened. Not if the world sees what really happened. Marcus hesitated. Do you have footage? Elijah froze. He hadn't even thought about that. The boardroom had security cameras. He said slowly, there should be. Marcus sighed. Then find it. Without that, all they see is a black executive with a temper. The call ended. Elijah closed the laptop, mind racing. Footage. Proof. The building had layers of surveillance. Someone somewhere had to have access. But getting it? That was another war. By noon, he received another blow. His LinkedIn feed exploded with posts from colleagues praising Catherine for her leadership under pressure. One even wrote, "A strong woman standing her ground in a challenging meeting. An inspiration to us all." Amira read over his shoulder. They're sanctifying her. He scrolled silently, then stopped. A comment under one of the posts, she should have hit harder. Amira covered her mouth. Oh my God, Elijah stared at the words. Not just at the hatred, but at how ordinary it looked, sitting there between corporate emojis and polite applause. That night, as he walked through the dim streets near headquarters, he saw the building again. His building. The glass tower glowed blue and silver, its lobby shining like an altar to success. A janitor wheeled a cart toward the service entrance, humming softly. Elijah's eyes caught the security camera above the door. He whispered under his breath, "You saw it, didn't you?" The janitor looked up, startled. "Sir?" Elijah shook his head. "Sorry, wrong person." He turned to leave, but the janitor called after him. "Wait, you're Mr. Carter, right?" Elijah stopped. "I was." The man looked around, voice low. "They told us not to talk about it. But it's what she did. I saw the clip. Someone kept it before they wiped the logs." Elijah's pulse spiked. "You have it?" The janitor's eyes darted toward the security booth. "Not here. Not safe to talk, please," Elijah said. "This matters." The man hesitated, then whispered, "Come tomorrow night, midnight, back entrance. I'll bring something you need to see." Before Elijah could respond, the janitor walked away, pushing his cart into the shadows. Elijah stood under the building's glow, breath fogging in the air. They had erased him, rewritten him, buried him in headlines, but ghosts still lingered in their systems. Bits, files, fragments of truth they hadn't yet destroyed. He walked home with a strange clarity tightening in his chest. For the first time since the slap, he felt something close to control returning. Tomorrow, he thought, he would stop being their erased man. Tomorrow, he would make them remember. The alley behind the corporate tower was silent except for the steady hum of air vents and the distant rush of traffic. Midnight draped the building in darkness, but the glass still caught the city's faint light, like it refused to stop shining, even for its ghosts. Elijah waited near the service door, hood pulled up, hands deep in his coat pockets. The cold bit through the seams. Every sound, footsteps, a car door slamming, the distant bark of a stray dog, felt sharper than usual. At 12:17, the door creaked open. The janitor stepped out, carrying a mop bucket in one hand and a small plastic bag in the other. His name tag read Luis. "You came," Elijah said. Luis nodded nervously. "Did anyone follow you?" "No." He glanced over his shoulder, then handed Elijah the bag. Inside, an old scratched USB drive wrapped in a torn paper towel. "This came from the backup server," Luis whispered. "After the meeting, the IT guy wiped everything, but I copied one file before they did. It's grainy, no sound, but it shows everything. Elijah stared at the drive, pulse hammering. You could lose your job for this. Luis gave a small, resigned smile. Already on night shift. No one sees me anyway. People like us, we don't exist until they need the floor clean. For a moment, the two men stood there in silence, bound by the quiet understanding of invisibility. Then Elijah said, "Thank you. This matters." Luis looked away. "Just be careful. They protect her. You don't know how far up this goes." He turned and disappeared into the building's shadow. At home, Elijah closed every curtain, turned off the Wi-Fi, and plugged in the drive. His laptop whirred, loading a file titled Cam26F Beard 409.move. The screen flickered. Then the boardroom appeared, muted colors, overhead light buzzing. He fast-forwarded through static until he saw himself walk in, suit crisp, posture composed. Then Catherine, her stiff smile, her whisper to the CFO. Then the slap, even without sound, the violence was unmistakable. The motion of her hand, the recoil of his head, the stunned stillness that followed. It was all there, recorded in sterile clarity. Elijah froze the frame at the moment her palm connected. Her face, tight, contemptuous. His, still, dignified, wounded. He sat back, breath unsteady. Proof. He replayed it again and again, trying to absorb it, not just the humiliation, but the evidence of her intent. Every detail became unbearable. The way the others looked down, the CEO's stillness, the security entering too quickly, as if already instructed. Amira entered quietly, drawn by the flickering light. "You found it?" He nodded. "It's real. She can't deny it now." She watched the footage in silence, then whispered, "You have to show someone." Elijah's jaw tightened. "I will, but not yet. I want them to feel safe first, before it hits them." Amira frowned. "That's dangerous." So was trusting them. He closed the laptop, the drive still inside. The next day, Elijah met Marcus at a small cafe far from downtown. Marcus leaned forward, voice low. "You look like a man carrying dynamite. I have video." Marcus blinked. "Of the slap?" "Everything." Christ, Marcus rubbed his forehead. "This isn't just corporate scandal territory anymore. This is front-page national." Elijah's eyes hardened. "Good. Maybe then they'll remember what they did." Marcus hesitated. "Listen, before you go nuclear, understand. Once it's out, they'll smear you harder. They'll drag your family into it. I'm already destroyed, Marcus. They can't take what's already gone." Marcus exhaled. "Send it to me. Let me verify it first. If it's authentic, I'll push it through channels I trust." Elijah nodded. "Give me 1 day. I want to see how far they'll go before they realize I still exist." That night, another message appeared in his inbox. From anonymous subject, "They know you have it." No body text. No signature. Just that line. Elijah's skin prickled. He looked around the dark room, every shadow feeling like a set of eyes. He checked the locks twice, then turned off the lights. But sleep wouldn't come. His mind replayed Luis's warning. "You don't know how far up this goes." At 2:40 a.m., headlights swept past the window. A black car idled briefly outside his apartment before driving off. He stood by the curtain, staring into the night until the sound faded. When he turned back to the table, the USB drive glinted faintly under the lamp. He realized then it wasn't just proof. It was a weapon, one that could shatter everything they'd built on silence, he whispered, almost to himself. "Tomorrow we start the fire." And for the first time since that boardroom slap, he smiled, thin, tired, but alive. Morning arrived gray and windless, the kind that made the city feel like it was holding its breath. Elijah barely touched his coffee. His phone buzzed with messages, some from friends offering cautious sympathy, others from unknown numbers filled with veiled threats. One read simply, "Delete what you have before it deletes you." He ignored them. At 9:12 a.m., a new email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Subject, "I was in the room." Body, "I can help you, but not here. Meet me at the library on 9th noon. Don't reply to this email." Elijah's pulse quickened. He slipped the USB drive into his coat pocket and left without telling Amira where he was going. The library was nearly empty, just the soft shuffling of pages and the hum of an ancient heater. He sat at a corner table facing the glass wall. Minutes passed. Then a young woman entered, head down, clutching a folder. She looked barely 20. She stopped at his table. "Mr. Carter." Elijah nodded cautiously. You sent the email? She sat, voice trembling. My name's Rachel. I was the intern taking notes that day. His eyes narrowed. You saw it? She nodded, quick and nervous. Every second. But they told me to delete my notes. HR said it was a sensitive incident. They made me sign an NDA and told me if I talked, I'd never work in this industry again. Elijah leaned forward. Why are you here? Because it's wrong, she whispered. I've been sick since that day. They rewrote everything. They said you were aggressive, that you threatened Catherine. But I know what I saw. Her fingers trembled as she slid the folder across the table. Inside were printed emails, internal memos between Catherine, the CEO, and HR. One line caught Elijah's eye. If Carter resists, provoke him. Make it appear insubordination. We'll handle the optics after. Elijah stared at the words until they blurred. They planned the whole thing, he murmured. Rachel nodded. There's more. They issued an internal directive yesterday, told employees not to speak to the press or risk termination. His voice was low but sharp. They're afraid, she swallowed hard. They should be. Catherine's already contacting PR firms to spin your video as edited footage. Elijah's mind burned. She doesn't even know it's out yet. Someone tipped her off, Rachel said. Probably IT, she's preparing her defense. He exhaled slowly, forcing calm. Then we move first, Rachel hesitated. Are you really going to release it? He met her eyes. If I don't, this becomes another closed file labeled unverified misconduct, but they'll destroy you. He smiled faintly. They already did. Silence settled. Then Rachel whispered, If you go public, I'll back you up. Elijah looked at her, this young intern risking everything for truth, and felt something shift. You don't have to do that. I do, she said, voice steady now. You stood up in that room. None of them did. Maybe it's my turn. He nodded once deeply. Then we do it together. That evening, Elijah met Marcus again at the cafe. He slid the USB and Rachel's documents across the table. Marcus's eyes widened. You're serious? More than ever. Marcus read quickly, his face tightening with each page. Jesus Christ. This isn't just racism, it's corporate conspiracy. They choreographed the whole thing. Elijah leaned back. Can you publish it? Marcus nodded slowly. I'll verify the footage, cross-match timestamps, and redact the intern's name for protection. Once I hit publish, there's no going back. Good, Elijah said. Let's burn the silence. Marcus looked at him. You understand, this will go everywhere. News channels, social media, maybe even the government. You'll be dissected publicly. Elijah met his gaze. Then let them look. Let them finally see. That night, Elijah returned home to find Amira waiting by the window. You're shaking, she said softly. I met someone. The intern. She gave me proof, emails, directives. Catherine's whole network is in it. Amira stared. You're going to expose them? Yes. She stepped closer, resting a hand against his chest. Then whatever comes next, we face it together. He nodded, pulling her into a silent embrace. The hum of the city outside grew distant. At 11:58 p.m., Marcus's message came through. Story live in 5 minutes. Brace yourself. Elijah sat in the dark, laptop open, waiting. When the article appeared, headline bold across the screen, he felt something close to air return to his lungs. Leaked footage shows. Black executive. Assaulted by white senior officer, internal emails. Reveal setup within minutes. The story exploded across platforms. Shares, outrage, hashtags, screenshots, corporate accounts going silent. Amira stood behind him, whispering, You did it. But Elijah didn't smile. He stared at the flood of comments, some supportive, others venomous. Race card again. Fake clip. He must have provoked her. He closed his eyes, letting the noise wash over him. Truth had finally spoken, but truth was never simple. He whispered half to himself. Now the storm begins. By dawn, the story had gone viral. Every major outlet was running it. The footage from the boardroom, Catherine striking Elijah, was everywhere. On news broadcasts, on Twitter reels, on TikTok edits with captions like, He didn't fight back. He stood tall, but so were the lies. Corporate spokespeople released statements within hours, calling the video selectively edited and claiming context was missing. Anonymous accounts flooded comment sections with scripted defenses. Some even dug through Elijah's past, old tweets, photos, anything they could twist. Marcus called him at 7:13 a.m. "They're panicking," he said breathlessly. "Legal just sent takedown requests to every major site, but it's too late. The video's been mirrored hundreds of times." Elijah watched the chaos unfold on his screen. "And Catherine? She's gone dark. Her lawyer's probably drafting a statement as we speak." "Good," Elijah muttered. "Let her explain the emails." Marcus hesitated. "About those. The company claims they're fabricated. They're asking for metadata to prove authenticity." Elijah clenched his jaw. "They're genuine." "Rachel gave them to me directly." "Then we need her to testify, Elijah. Otherwise, they'll bury this under unverified sources." Elijah fell silent. Rachel's terrified face flashed in his mind. Meanwhile, Catherine sat in her penthouse office, blinds drawn, phone buzzing nonstop. The CEO, Robert Langford, was already shouting on speakerphone. "Do you have any idea what this has done to our stock price?" Catherine's voice was cold. "It's being handled." "Handled? You're on video assaulting a black executive during a diversity meeting." "It was a setup," she snapped. "He baited me," Robert scoffed. "Then prove it. Because if this tanks our reputation any further, you're the sacrificial lamb." The line went dead. Catherine slammed her phone down, breathing hard. For the first time, she felt fear, not of Elijah, but of losing everything she had built on lies. She opened her laptop and began typing. If they wanted a villain, she'd give them a confession, but on her terms. Back in Elijah's apartment, reporters crowded outside the building. Cameras flashed through the windows, microphones pressed against doors. Amira peered through the blinds, frowning. "You can't stay here. They'll never leave you alone." "I'm not hiding," Elijah said. "You're not hiding," she echoed softly. "But you're not safe either." His phone rang again. It was Rachel. Her voice was shaking. "They know, Elijah. HR called me this morning. They said I've violated my NDA. They're threatening to sue me." Elijah's chest tightened. "Listen to me, don't panic. I'll get you a lawyer." "I don't want money," she said. "I just want to tell the truth before they twist it." He paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes, meet me tonight. Same place, after hours." That evening, Elijah and Rachel met again in the library, now dark except for a few reading lamps. She looked pale but determined, clutching a voice recorder. "I recorded our meeting with HR that day," she said quietly, "when they told me to rewrite the notes. I didn't even know why I kept it, but I think I do now." She pressed play. A voice, Catherine's, spoke coldly. "Delete anything suggesting aggression on my part. If he pushes back, make it sound like insubordination. We'll control the narrative." Elijah's hands shook as the recording played on. It was irrefutable. "Rachel," he whispered, "this changes everything." "I know. Send it to Marcus tonight," he nodded. "And you, go somewhere safe." "They won't stop now." Rachel smiled faintly. "Neither will we." By midnight, Marcus uploaded the audio. The article update hit the internet like a second explosion. "New audio leak confirms company cover-up in racial assault case." It was everywhere within minutes. Trending hashtags. Late-night news. Podcast dissecting every second of the tape. Catherine's name became synonymous with corruption. But the fire didn't stop there. Protests erupted outside the company headquarters by morning. Hundreds gathered with signs reading "Justice for Elijah" and "Accountability Now." Employees began leaking more internal memos anonymously, exposing a pattern of racism and cover-ups dating back years. The CEO released a statement. Effective immediately, Catherine Monroe has been suspended pending investigation. Elijah watched it all unfold on TV, silent. Amira sat beside him, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered, but he shook his head. "Not yet. They'll try one last move. He was right." The next day, Catherine appeared on a live broadcast. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, voice steady. "I made mistakes," she said, eyes glistening with rehearsed remorse. "But I was provoked. Elijah Carter created a toxic environment, questioned authority, and manipulated my emotions for sympathy. I was defending myself." The interviewer leaned forward. "Are you saying the video is fake?" "Not fake," she replied, "edited. Context matters." The comments section split in real time. Half believed her, half called her out. Elijah watched, fists clenched. Marcus texted him seconds later. They're trying to reframe the narrative. We need to hit back, final blow. What do you suggest? Elijah replied. Marcus sent one line. Public press conference tomorrow, no filters. No fear. Elijah looked out the window at the flashing lights below. He'd wanted peace. But maybe peace came only after fire. He turned to Amira. Tomorrow, the world hears my voice, not their version of me. As the night deepened, Elijah rehearsed his speech quietly, his reflection staring back from the darkened glass. He wasn't the same man who'd walked into that boardroom weeks ago. He was the storm now, and the world was finally listening. The press conference began at noon. Cameras lined the marble lobby of the downtown Civic Center, cords snaking like veins across the floor. Dozens of reporters filled the hall, their murmurs blending into a low electric hum. Every lens pointed toward the podium. Elijah stood behind the curtain, palms pressed flat against his notes. His lawyer, Dana Morales, whispered, "Stay composed. You're not here to argue. You're here to reveal." He nodded once. His chest rose and fell slowly. Then the stage manager signaled, the curtain parted, flashbulbs exploded. The crowd roared with questions. Elijah stepped into the light, a single dark suit against a sea of white faces. His expression was calm, not defiant, not broken, just quiet, steady truth. He placed his notes on the podium, but didn't look at them. His voice came low, steady. 2 weeks ago I was assaulted in a boardroom by my superior. I was then fired for conduct unbecoming. They thought silence would bury it. He paused. Cameras clicked. They called me a liar. Said the video was edited, that I provoked her. So let's talk about what provocation means. His eyes swept the crowd. If you stand your ground while black, it's called aggression. If you demand fairness, it's called arrogance. And if you're assaulted, it's your fault for making someone uncomfortable. The room went still. The weight of each word hit like a drum. They told me to move on. I won't. He motioned toward the screen behind him. Marcus, offstage, cued the footage. Not the viral clip this time, but the uncut recording. The room dimmed as the projector flickered to life. The entire scene played. Catherine's slap, the silence afterward, her smirk, the HR officers frozen in fear. Then the audio recording Rachel had given him. Catherine's voice filled the room. Delete anything suggesting aggression on my part. We'll control the narrative. A ripple moved through the audience. Gasps, murmurs, heads turning. Even the journalists stopped typing. Elijah stood perfectly still as it ended. That, he said quietly, is the system. A system that lets people like me get erased by the people in power. One email, one statement, one silence at a time. He looked straight into the cameras. This isn't just about me. This is about every person who was told to stay quiet, to be grateful, to fit in. Today, I'm done fitting in. He stepped back from the podium. The silence broke like glass. Applause erupted, thunderous, raw, emotional. Reporters shouted questions, but Elijah didn't stay. He turned, walked off stage. Cameras chased him, flashes slicing through the corridor as Marcus and Dana guided him out. Outside, the plaza was flooded. Protesters waved banners. Some cried. Others simply stood, fists raised. Amira ran up to him, eyes bright. You did it, she whispered, voice trembling. He exhaled shakily. We'll see. That night, networks replayed his speech on loop. News anchors debated it, analysts dissected it. Hashtags trended globally. But something different was happening this time. People listened. A senator called for a federal inquiry. The company's stock nosedived another 12%. Investors demanded Catherine's resignation. In her glass-walled office, Catherine watched the coverage in silence. Her assistant stood behind her, too afraid to speak. On the screen, Elijah's face appeared again, calm, resolute. Her phone buzzed. A message from the CEO. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Legal will handle your exit. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she laughed. A brittle, cracked sound. Terminated, she whispered. By him. Her reflection in the dark glass seemed to sneer back at her. For the first time, she realized the empire she'd built on control had turned to dust. Meanwhile, Rachel was called in for questioning by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The investigation had begun. Elijah accompanied her for support, sitting silently as she recounted every detail. The manipulation, the altered reports, the pressure to lie. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. When it was over, the agent nodded. "You did the right thing, Ms. Park. This is going to help a lot of people." Rachel smiled faintly. "It's about time." Elijah placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave." She looked at him. "So were you. But what happens now?" He didn't answer. He didn't know yet. That evening, Elijah walked alone through the city. Billboards flashed news updates. CEO fired after racism scandal. Former executive speaks out. Corporate reckoning. He passed people whispering, staring. Some nodded in quiet respect. Others just looked uncomfortable. He didn't feel victorious. Just hollow, Amira called him later. "You should rest," she said gently. "I can't," he replied. "There's too much noise." "I need quiet, then come home," she said. "Not to the fight." "Just home?" He didn't answer right away. The word home sounded unfamiliar, like something he hadn't earned yet. Finally, he said softly, "Maybe tomorrow." At midnight, Elijah received an email, an anonymous one. The subject line read, "There's more." He hesitated, then opened it. Inside were several attachments, HR reports, internal chat logs, a private message chain between Catherine and Robert Langford. In it, Catherine had written, "If the board finds out we ignored discrimination complaints, they'll come after both of us," and Robert had replied, "Then make them disappear." Elijah's pulse quickened. The rot went deeper than he thought. He stared at the screen, jaw tightening. For every door he'd opened, there was another one waiting behind it, much darker, older, more dangerous. The real reckoning hadn't begun yet. He closed the laptop, the city lights flickering across his face. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we finish this." By morning, the story had mutated into something bigger than any one man's fight. It was no longer Elijah Carter versus Catherine Monroe. It was a national crisis, a mirror no one wanted to look into. Headlines screamed across every platform. Corporate giant implicated in systemic racism cover-up. Federal investigators move in after new leaks. CEOs, secret emails expose decade of abuse. Elijah's anonymous email had changed everything. The evidence was undeniable. The messages between Catherine and Robert Langford confirmed what the world suspected. This wasn't an isolated case. It was institutional rot. Marcus burst into Elijah's apartment, phone in hand, voice breathless. "The feds just raided the headquarters. Full-scale investigation, subpoenas, data seizures, everything. They've got Langford cornered." Elijah stood still for a long moment, trying to process the words. "They're finally doing it," he murmured. Marcus grinned, a rare, genuine grin. "You burned their empire to the ground," but Elijah didn't smile back. His eyes drifted toward the TV, where footage showed federal agents entering the gleaming glass building that once symbolized his dreams. Employees stood outside, stunned, watching their leaders fall. Amira appeared from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "It's over," she said softly. "No," Elijah replied, his tone low, heavy. "It's just the beginning." Inside the boardroom that had started it all, chaos reigned. Papers scattered, computers seized, executives shouting. Catherine sat alone, head bowed, wrists trembling as she signed her official termination documents. Robert Langford stood across the room, arguing with 2 agents. "You can't just take those files, those are confidential company assets." One of the agents, unfazed, replied, "They're now evidence in a federal investigation. You can cooperate or obstruct, Mr. Langford, your choice." Langford's face drained of color. He sank into a chair, muttering, "This isn't how it was supposed to go." Catherine glanced at him once bitterly. "You thought you could bury it," she said quietly. But he didn't stay buried. He turned on her. "You slapped him. You started this." She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "I started it? You built it. You told me to make it disappear." The agents exchanged looks. Every word was being recorded. By afternoon, the footage of their confrontation had leaked. Networks played it on loop. 2 powerful executives turning on each other as their empire crumbled. Social media devoured it. Hashtags trended worldwide. Justice for Elijah. Corporate racism exposed. Systemic truth. The company's board released an emergency statement. "We condemn the actions and culture that have led to this moment. A complete restructuring is underway." Stock value plummeted. Sponsors withdrew partnerships. The empire that once symbolized untouchable privilege now bled in public. Elijah met with federal investigators that evening. They wanted his testimony. Agent Lawson, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a measured tone, placed a recorder on the table. "Mr. Carter, we're aware you received anonymous evidence last night. We need full disclosure." Elijah nodded and slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything's on there. Chats, internal reports, timelines. It's all theirs." Lawson studied him. "You understand this makes you the primary whistleblower in one of the largest corporate discrimination cases in the country?" He hesitated. "I didn't plan for this." She leaned forward slightly. "You didn't need to. The truth finds its way out." He nodded slowly. As he left the federal building, reporters swarmed him again. Microphones thrust into his face. "Elijah, do you feel vindicated?" "Elijah, what's next for you?" "Elijah, any comment for Catherine Monroe?" He didn't answer, just kept walking, the flash of cameras following him down the steps into the setting sun. That night, Catherine Monroe appeared again, this time not on a news channel, but in a dimly lit holding room. Her lawyer sat beside her, whispering strategy, but she wasn't listening. Her gaze was fixed on a single small monitor showing her own reflection. "Catherine Monroe," an agent announced from the doorway, "you're under investigation for obstruction of justice, falsification of records, and racial discrimination under federal law." Her throat tightened. For the first time, she didn't have words. The agent read her rights and she nodded mechanically. Cameras weren't here now. No makeup, no lighting, no audience. Just her. Small, stripped of power, facing the reality she'd written herself into. Meanwhile, in a small apartment across the city, Elijah sat with Amira on the balcony, watching the skyline flicker under storm clouds. "You should be proud," she said quietly. He didn't respond right away. "You changed something," she pressed. "People are marching, protesting, speaking out. You started something that matters," he sighed. "Maybe, but it cost everything." She turned toward him. "Would you undo it?" He looked at her, at the tiredness in her eyes, the resilience. "No," he said finally, "but I'd trade every headline for peace." They sat in silence for a while, listening to distant thunder. 2 days later, the news broke. Robert Langford resigns amid criminal probe. Elijah watched the press conference from his couch. Langford, looking pale and hollow, stood before the same cameras that once glorified him. "I take full responsibility," Langford said, voice thin. "We failed our employees, our community, and our values." He avoided mentioning Elijah's name, but the world knew. The next morning, a delivery arrived at Elijah's door. Inside the envelope was a single letter, unsigned but typed on corporate stationery. "You were right to fight. But understand this, systems don't fall overnight. They rebuild themselves quietly. Be careful what you awaken." Elijah read it twice, then set it on fire in the sink. The paper curled, turned to ash. He whispered, "Then I'll keep waking them." As night fell, he took one last walk through the city. Posters of protest hung on walls, murals of his face appearing in alleyways. He paused before one, painted in vivid colors. Beneath it, the words, "He stood so others could rise." For the first time in weeks, he smiled, not with triumph, but with release. He closed his eyes and listened to the rain. He knew there would be more battles, quieter, dirtier, endless ones. But something had shifted. The silence had cracked, and once silence breaks, it never sounds the same again. 3 months later, the headlines had faded, but the echo remained. The company rebranded, issued statements, and hired consultants to rebuild trust. Board members posed beside diversity banners. HR departments across the country scrambled to update policies. The machine adjusted, not destroyed, only altered, but Elijah Carter was no longer inside it. He'd vanished from the public eye after his final interview. No more cameras, no more panels. Reporters called it strategic silence. It wasn't. It was survival. He spent his mornings teaching leadership ethics at a local community college. Unpaid guest lectures, small groups, mostly young people of color who saw themselves in his story. One day after class, a student lingered behind, a quiet girl named Maya with a notebook full of scribbles. "Sir," she said, hesitant, Can I ask, do you regret speaking out? Elijah looked at her for a long moment. I regret that it had to be spoken at all, he said finally. But no, I don't regret the truth. She nodded, then asked softly, did it change anything? He smiled faintly. Change doesn't happen in headlines. It happens when people like you stop asking for permission. Her eyes lit up with quiet determination. She closed her notebook and left. Elijah watched her go, feeling something stir again. Not triumph, but continuity. Across town, Catherine Monroe sat in a courtroom. She wore no power suit now, just a gray blazer and empty eyes. The trial had stretched for weeks. Her lawyers had argued that the system was to blame, that she was a product of institutional culture. But the evidence was too strong. Rachel's recordings, Elijah's testimony, the leaked emails. The judge read the verdict. On counts of workplace discrimination, defamation, and obstruction of justice, guilty. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Catherine's fingers tightened on the table. Her attorney whispered, "We can appeal." She shook her head. No, it's done. For the first time, she didn't fight. The cameras caught her face, realized not of defiance, but of exhaustion. She mouthed something as she was escorted out. He never even raised his voice. That night, Elijah watched the coverage quietly. The TV flickered in the dim apartment, casting shadows across the walls. Amira joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "It's over now," she said. He didn't answer immediately. "No," he murmured, "it's just visible now." She turned toward him. "You could come back, you know. Start again. Build your own firm," he shook his head. "I built once inside their walls. Now I'll build outside them." "What will you call it?" she asked. He thought for a long moment. Then, the Carter Foundation. For workplace justice, she smiled. "It suits you." Weeks passed. The world moved on, but the undercurrent remained. Podcasts dissected the trial. Documentaries called it a turning point in corporate history. Yet Elijah stayed detached, quieter, more grounded. Marcus dropped by one evening with a box of files. "You're trending again," he said. "Apparently your speech is being used in leadership seminars. Even overseas," Elijah chuckled softly. "They love to borrow the lesson, not the struggle." Marcus smirked. "Still, you made a dent." Elijah opened the box and it was full of letters. Handwritten, messy, real. From employees, students, even a few anonymous executives. "You made me report harassment. I used your words to stand up for someone. Because of you, I didn't quit." He read in silence, eyes glistening. "Maybe that's enough." Marcus nodded. "For now." One evening, Elijah received a call from Rachel. "They offered me a settlement," she said. "Big one." And I declined. "I want to testify before Congress. They're opening hearings on corporate discrimination next month." Elijah smiled. "You always were braver than you knew." She hesitated. "You'll be there, right?" He looked out the window at the skyline, the same city that once broke him, now softer in twilight. "Yes," he said. "I'll be there. Quietly. This time it's your voice the world needs." A month later, Washington. The hearing room was packed. Lawmakers, cameras, journalists. Rachel sat before the panel, hands steady. Elijah sat at the back, anonymous in the crowd. When her turn came, she spoke clearly, firmly. "I saw how silence was weaponized, how truth became negotiable, and I watched a man lose everything simply because he refused to bow to power. That's not policy failure, that's moral decay." The room went still. Even the senators stopped typing. Elijah felt something inside him ease, like a breath he'd been holding for too long. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. After the hearing, he walked alone along the National Mall. The air was cool, the reflecting pool still. He thought of everything. The boardroom slap, the humiliation, the protests, the letters. All of it had led here to quiet honesty, unglamorous but real. He stopped near the water and whispered to the reflection, "It wasn't justice. But it was truth, and truth outlives everything." A gust of wind rippled across the pool, scattering the reflection. His face fractured into light and motion. He smiled faintly. That night, Amira found him writing at his desk, the first page of a book. The system isn't broken. It's working as designed. He was documenting everything. Not for profit, not for exposure, but as a record. Think anyone will read it? She asked. He didn't look up. The ones who need to. Months later, the Carter Foundation launched quietly. No fanfare, no press releases. Just a website, a mission statement, and a small team working out of a single-room office downtown. Its first tagline, for every silence that shouldn't have been. The phone began to ring within hours. Victims of discrimination, whistleblowers, survivors. People looking for a place to start again. Elijah listened to each one personally. He didn't promise miracles, just guidance. One call ended with a simple line that stayed with him. You gave me courage I didn't know I had. He stared at the phone long after the call ended, then whispered to himself, maybe that's enough. Months later, final scene. The city skyline glows gold at sunset. Elijah walks along the river with Amira. The sound of street musicians drifts through the air. For once, the noise of the world feels distant. Do you miss it? She asks. The boardrooms, the suits, the titles. He shakes his head. Titles fade, but truth, that leaves a mark. She slips her hand into his. Then you've left one, he smiles. No, we did. They walk in silence, the sun dipping low behind them. A world bruised but changing. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. And as the light fades, one last thought lingers in Elijah's mind. Power bends for no one, Emo, until someone stands unflinching long enough to make it break.